Hi there, my name is Cynthia Wakio. I'm the Communication and Events Manager here at Corporate Staffing. Today we're going to be talking about labor laws. With me, I have a very special guest, our CEO here at Corporate Staffing, Mr. Pamina Swainaina. Karibu sana.
Thank you, Cynthia, for having me.
All right, Let's dive into it. Give us a brief background on labor laws in Kenya.
Very good question, Cynthia. So the relationship between the employer and the employee is governed by two things. So the first thing is the Acts of Parliament, and this is where we see the labor laws coming in place. So I will not bore you with a lot of details, but you find there are 5 acts of employment that relate to the relationship between an employer and an employee. And you'll find the most famous one is the Employment Act, which was last reviewed in the year 2007. So that's why we say Employment Act 2007. So there are other 4 major ones, but in the interest of time, I'll not go through them. So the other thing that governs the relationship between the employer and the employee, and we look at it at the later date, is what we call a HR policy. So what I mean by this is you as an employer, you can say in my institution or my company, this is the behavior I expect of my employees. And how do you communicate that? You communicate that in terms of this very important document we call a HR policy. So now the focus for today, I know it's the labor laws, and that's what we are going to talk about.
So as an employer, how do these labor laws help me?
Now, just like I said at the beginning, is number one, there's the issue of compliance. We say that you being ignorant of what the law says it's not a defense. And a lot of times you will find there are a lot of, nowadays you find employees know their rights. And if you don't adhere to the law, then chances of you being taken to court, wasting time, and even sometimes being fined heavily by the courts are there, and it's no longer a joke. So it's in your best interest as an employer to make sure that, number one, you understand the law themselves. Number two, you comply with those laws. So, and here you have 2 options. Number one, you can hire your own HR person, or you can outsource your HR function to experts such as ourselves. And the thing is, we are recognized by the government. We are registered by the Institute of Human Resource Management. This is the body that governs the HR profession, and we can represent you on even labor matters. So compliance, I would say it's important. And it's not just important also for the sake of it. I believe when you are compliant, when both parties know that this is what is required of me, then you have a better working environment, and people understand their rights and obligations. Yeah.
So as an employer, I want to be able to protect my business. So which acts are mandatory for me to be familiar to?
Now, I would say all of them are important, the 5 of them that I mentioned, but you find the critical one is the Employment Act, because this is where you will find a lot of the issues that concerns employees and employers on a day-to-day basis. For example, the employment contract is covered there. Things to do with leave days, things to do with sick leave, things to do with the disciplinary process, things to do with termination, all of them are covered in that document. So if there's a document, I would highly encourage one to master. If you're in management, if you're in business, it's the Employment Act. Not to say that the others are not important, they are, but the Employment Act 2007, as we discussed today, it's crucial because that's the one which is mostly applicable on a day-to-day basis.
So corporate staffing has international clients. Do these laws apply to them?
Very good question. So on now and then we get clients interested in doing business in Kenya. And they say when you go to Rome, you do what?
Do as the Rome.
You do as the Romans do. Yes. So that means when you come to Kenya, you must also be compliant. So you cannot say you're exempted by the rules and the regulations that exist. So if it's in terms of a contract, you should just adhere to our law. So you don't come, and I've seen instances where clients, they come with their from their country and they use the same document, or for example, a HR policy, and they want to use that in Kenya, but you find it could be going contra to the law. For example, leave days in Kenya, you need to give your employees a minimum of 21 days. But there are instances, there's some countries I know where leave days is only 16 days. Yeah. Issues to do with, like, now maternity leave. Kenya right now, as we speak, is 90. It's 90 days, calendar days. But in some countries, you might find it's either longer or shorter. So with that in mind, it's important for them also to consult experts such as ourselves. We look at what do they have in their country, and then we see what is appropriate in the Kenyan scenario. And then if there's a need to edit, revamp, we do that.
Yeah. So when we're looking at labor laws, where does the employer-employee conflict come in?
Very good question. If some of the things that are in the labor laws are not taken care of, then you find people start fighting from the very beginning. Yeah, it's like a bad marriage. So an example here is the contract a lot of times. So the terms of the contract. So you'll find someone, you agreed to a certain salary or benefits, and the employer is not providing the same. Or even you find we agree on certain performance standards. So for example, we are shooting this video. This video, just to give an example, if I had told you that every week we need to do 4 videos, now, and you're only doing 2, and then the next 2, I don't know where you are the rest of the week. Then you see, I can also put you to task on that, because, I mean, how come you're not meeting your KPIs? Yeah. The other big issue is the issue of termination, how you go about it, whether it's because of non-performance, whether it's because you're declaring someone redundant. Remember, the law is all about the process. It's not so much about the intention. It's about the process. Have you been able to follow the process? Yes. And this is not your own process, the way you think things should happen. It's following the laid down regulations. And that's why we come and help the employers. In terms of documentation, how do you draft documents? How do you make sure that they adhere to the labor requirements, the law requirements, and then to make sure that you are doing things by the book.
Yeah. All right, you've talked about processes. So briefly take us through the process of terminating a contract.
Now, when you are terminating a contract, it depends, number one, with the type of contract. So I'll give the example of if it's a contract that is, it was time bound. What do I mean? If I give you a contract and it says this contract runs until 31st of December, then if come 31st of December, unless I want to renew, then your contract is terminated. And there you find there are not many issues, because both parties do understand. The problem where you find the issues is the long-term contracts. And here you'll find issues to do with performance. How do I terminate someone who's not performing to my expectation? Then the other issue, which is a big headache, is if the company is not doing well, how do I declare someone redundant? So those are 2 issues. And I would say there's a process, like now redundancy, there's a whole process you have to go through. Same case also with performance, is also a process. And I think as a HR practitioner and also as an employer, the minute you introduce fairness, I mean, I'm able to sleep well. If I know I did the right thing, I'm able to sleep well. The employee is also happy because he was taken through a process. So it helps to be compliant.
Yeah, that's very important. So what does the law say about leave days?
Very good question. So right now, as we speak, an employee is entitled to a minimum of 21 days for annual leave. When it comes to sick leave, an employee is entitled to 7 days on full pay and 7 days on half pay. If it comes to the other leave that we have is maternity leave, and as the name suggests, for the female employee, a maximum of 90 calendar days. Then for male, we have 14 days. Now, other leaves that people fight on is study leave. There's nothing called study leave. So that is at the discretion of the employer. Even compassionate leave, there's nothing like compassionate leave in the Employment Act as it is now. So again, that's at the discretion of the employer. Now, what you'll find is that employers can introduce compassionate leave in the HR policy. They can say, my staff, obvious, this is life. We have other lives apart from being employees or employers. So you can introduce a clause and say, as we provide as a company, we provide study leave, or we also provide compassionate leave, and this is the criteria that we adhere to. Now, let me mention that there's currently a bill being discussed in Parliament that is going to look at introducing, making to law some of these things, which then were not considered, but you've seen them being important. For example, the issue of compassionate leave is being introduced. That one I know. That one is being discussed. Yeah. Study leave, no, not much. Something I would want to emphasize when it comes to the leave. Now, what I've provided to you is the minimum. So, but there's no reason, there's nothing that prevents an employer from enhancing. And that is why someone would ask, I mean, as you say, 21 days, as we have 30 days, what the law stipulates is the minimum. So it's up to the employer. You can give your staff 30 days, you can give them 45 days, 60 days, it's all up to you. Yeah. So what I've discussed with you is the minimum. And that is why now, when we come on board as your expert, we're able to advise you. For example, you find a lot of NGOs, they will work with 30 days. SMEs, we work with 21 days, but with a bit of flexibility. So it all depends with the organization. So long as the important thing is you are meeting the minimum.
Yeah. Let's talk about resignation. What does the law say?
Now, when it comes to an employee resigning, we need to refer to the employment contract. So if this employee, you had agreed that they need to give you certain number of days as notice, then they need to adhere to that. If they don't adhere, then you find as an employer, you can recover the notice period from the salary. Yeah. And I know the instances also where employees they wait to be paid and they disappear on Monday. You don't see them on first. It does happen. An employer is empowered to go to court and even sue you to recover that money because you breached a contract. Similar to you, if an employer terminates you and they don't pay for the notice that they're supposed to give you, even you can take them to the courts and you get your dues. So in terms of resignation, is for both parties to follow the process. Yeah. And in terms of the process, it must be in writing, whether it's the employee resigning or the employer firing someone. And if there are days that needs to be adhered to, whether it's 7 days, 30 days, or even 2 months, sometimes some managers, they are required to give a 90 days notice, 3 months notice. So each party needs to give their part or do their part. And the other issue you find that comes along in terms of resignation, if you have leave days, you need to be compensated. Yeah. If you had also overutilized your leave days, the employer can recover from your final dues.
Yeah. All right. Then briefly talk to us about statutory deductions.
Yes, statutory deduction. These ones I would say it's a straightforward matter. So again, they are set by the government. It's not for the employer to decide. So you'll find you're required to use the current rates when it comes to pay as you earn tax, when it comes to the NHIF, when it comes to NSSF. If an employee had taken a loan, they were financed by the government for the university education. This is what we call the higher education loans board. Yeah. So to say those are the major deductions, and there are always this conversation on NHIF is being increased. I don't know what. So it's good at least you know what is currently in the news, so that you also be compliant.
Yeah. All right. This is a broad matter. We can take a lot of time speaking about it. Yeah. So tell me how CSS comes in to help HR managers and employers.
Now, as a business owner or as a manager, I know your expertise may not be in this area of HR, of labor laws. So that's where we come in terms of number one, helping you to interpret the laws. Number two, we come in to support you should you be having a matter that touches on any of these laws. For example, the other day I was helping an employer in Nakuru. We actually never met. We did everything online. So this employer terminated someone on account of gross misconduct, theft. And the employee rushed to the labor office in Nakuru and they came with all these manner of conditions, what they're supposed to be paid. So the employer, because they didn't have a HR person, they Googled us, they found us online, and we communicated from there. And what came out is, for us, as a third party, I'm very objective. I'll look at the case the way it was. So indeed, there are some things that the employer had not included in terms of the final dues. Because even if someone steals for you, you don't become emotional. So there's things, if you're supposed to have paid like leave days, indeed, you need to have paid that. But also, there are things that the employee had included as part of his demands, which should not have been paid. Yes, for us was to balance, and at the end of the day, because I got a chance to even talk to the two of them. At the end of the two of them felt that they had gotten justice. So the employer, we advised him on what they're required to do, and also for the employee, we clearly showed them that yes, based on the case at hand, this is only what is due to you. And so we achieved a compromise, and both parties are happy.
All right.
Yeah.
As an employer watching this, what would you tell them?
For me, if you're an employer, I know what can happen if your mind is not settled. So two things I would advise employers. Number one is to make sure that you're compliant. You're bound to, your life will become much easier when you're compliant. And so if you can set up system and process it from the word go, make sure you have employment contract, make sure you have HR policies, make sure that all these are communicated to the staff. Then it will be very easy for you now to handle the small things that come about here and there, and they'll always be there. Yeah. And that's where we come in terms of experts. You not being an expert, let's help you. Let's have a sitting. It's not expensive. Complying is not expensive. But now when you're taken to the courts, it can really waste for you a lot of time and resources. Yeah. So it's much easier for you to engage an expert at the beginning. As they say, it's better to buy an umbrella when it's not raining. Yeah.
All right. Thank you so much for that. As you can see, HR experts are very important to enable you to protect your business and at the same time streamline your processes in your organization.
Excellent. Yes.
All right. Yeah. Thank you so much for that.
Thank you for your time.
Thank you so much for watching this video. As you've heard, we are here to help. All you need to do is leave us with your details and our HR consultants will reach out to you to take you to the next step. Thank you so much and see you next time.